Attention, everybody. The views and opinions expressed on this show are not necessarily those of Acts Ministry, Acts Media Group, and or their affiliate and subordinate ministries and or nonprofits. So, here he is. He's here to talk about all kinds of stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's Crime Time at Dr. Steve Albrecht. Take it away, Steve.
Thanks, producer Matt. Welcome to Crime Time. This is Crime Time Podcast, episode 54. I'm Dr. Steve Albrecht, and I'm joining you from the Acts Media Group studios in Springfield, Missouri. For this hour, I'll be talking with Arthur Soriano. As a teenager, Arthur was a gang member in San Diego's Mid-City area. His involvement in that life landed him in prison, and upon his final release, he reconnected with his family and began walking the path to change his life. An encounter with a San Diego police juvenile detective caused him to think about becoming a mentor for teenagers living in or around the street gang lifestyle. He began that process supported by his wife and children. Today, Arthur is the president and CEO of Youth Empowerment San Diego, a company that believes in community engagement, youth mentorship, and building resilience. Since Arthur came from a trauma-informed background, he recognizes the impact living in a trauma-filled home can have on young children. Countless studies have demonstrated the impact of living in a dangerous, violent home that can have on kids, and as they grow up, they become dangerous and violent themselves. We'll discuss why trauma victims so often become crime perpetrators. We'll also talk about the process and the impact of, quote, restorative justice, unquote, which is an interesting concept. It puts crime victims in the same room with juvenile crime perpetrators to talk about how the crime has harmed them and ask the juvenile perpetrator to admit what they have done and ask for forgiveness. Using a structured, facilitated discussion, the young men or women who committed these crimes against others seek to apologize, explain why they did what they did, and ask for their forgiveness. You can find more information and even make a donation to Arthur's website at www.youthempowermentsd, that's youthempowermentsd, like San Diego.org. Arthur, welcome to the program today, and thanks for coming on Crime Time.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Did I get your bio? Did I leave out anything that you need to correct, or did I get it pretty close off your website?
No, that tells the narrative. Trauma-informed approach, restorative practices is something that I hold value to my personal life. And once I brought healing to myself, then I was able to connect with the community and bring healing to the community as well.
So when you talk about trauma in your own home, was it substance abuse? Was it violence? Was it abandonment? Mistreatment? How would you define the trauma that was happening in your own home?
Well, the trauma started when I was a kid. Growing up in East San Diego, and now it's Rosa Park, but back in that day it was Highland Park on Highland Avenue. From a single mother, always working, cleaning homes in, different communities, Coronado, areas of affluent neighborhoods. She didn't have the time and, to be there for me.
Right.
So as a kid, that fatherless factor had a big impact on my life. So being that it had a big impact on my life, the sense of belonging, the sense of wanting to be a part of something, I connected with the East San Diego gang.
And did you ever know your father?
Well, it's funny. We just built the relationship this last year.
Wow. And
he's 80 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. So we're building that relationship right now, and it's never too late to reconnect with family members. So I had a lot of resentment growing up towards them for not being there, but now the forgiveness and connecting with him and me feeling good about myself, and it's actually working out. Normally it doesn't work out like that, but we're in a situation where we're connecting and building the relationship. So he's actually going to come visit in a couple months and stay with me a few weeks at my home here in San Diego.
Yeah,
so
good for you.
I'm looking forward to that.
And do you have brothers and sisters as well?
Yes, I have 6 brothers from his side, and I have 2 twin sisters from my mother's side.
Wow.
So my mother, she was my mother and father. She's a strong Colombian woman that migrated to the United States when she was 19 years old in the Bronx, New York. I was actually born in the Bronx.
Wow.
But by the age of 5 or 6 years of age. She got tired of living there, and she wanted to come somewhere where it was diverse.
And warmer.
Somewhere where a community where, yes, and warmer.
Yeah, no
so
snow.
we landed in East San Diego City Heights.
So you look at,
go ahead.
you know, your time in as a teenager. When did the gang lifestyle start to appeal to you? Junior high school, early high school? When did it start to appeal to you?
Wilson Middle School, at the age of 13, 14, the 7th grade. The fascination. That's where it starts. 6th, 7th, 8th grade is the time period where kids get involved in gangs, and that's where it started for me. So once I was in, I'm that individual that I'm full throttle, and whatever I do, I'm an extremist, right? And so, you know, I took that life head on, and you know, there was a lot of consequences to that, but that led me to juvenile hall, adult prison. But in prison, juvenile hall, it's individuals with unresolved trauma, right? And they're in the situations and circumstances, and if they don't heal and become resilient from them, then, you know, the mass incarceration, the negative lifestyles begin to take place. So that's what happened to me. And then in that specific community, I remember, and you were probably a police officer back then. I remember down University, Fairmont.
Yep.
Now it's a mid-city police department, but back then, there was no police department. The nearest police department was, I believe, Waring Road, around that area, 10 miles away.
Yeah, Arrow Drive, right?
And that particular neighborhood, yeah, Arrow Drive. In that particular area, it was a melting pot. So during the Vietnam War, you know, all the refugees started coming, Somalia, Kurds. So then you have Latinos, and you have all walks of life. So they come with this trauma, a lot of it from war, and they're put into this specific community, right, of kids seeing violence in other countries and other areas, and then you put us all in together. That's unresolved trauma. So you're going to have chaos. So during them times, especially during the late 1980s and early 1990s, was that traumatic cycle of violence. There was a lot of activities. And then you had, you know, law enforcement as well, the 3 strikes. Everything was, you know, lock them up, put them away. So that's the lifestyle that I lived for many, many years. So yeah, I'm just glad and fortunate to be where I'm at today.
So when you look at programs like DARE, and I don't even know if DARE is still taught in the schools. You know, back in the day, DARE was, I worked from the PD from 84 to 2000, but, you know, DARE was a program where they brought cops into that early time that you talk about, which is, you know, that impressionable time, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, right around there, 6th and 7th grade, where they tried to get these kids to sort of understand, you know, the gang lifestyle and the drug lifestyle. But I always thought that the DARE was kind of too early. I thought it should have really been focused on middle school kids. I mean, you know, when you're in high school, you have a job and a girlfriend and a car, and, you know, your life starts to come together in terms of options. But when you're 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, you can't do much. And so you're pretty impressionable. And also these kids, as you know from your work, you know, they don't like authority, whether it's teachers or parents or cops or counselors, or, you know, maybe they get some structure from, you know, coaches and things like that, but they don't like authority, and they're in that tough sort of period between puberty and hormones and peer pressure and all that. So, you know, you look at a program like DARE, and I always thought that it was aimed in the wrong direction. What's your sense of stuff like that?
Well, for me, I wish I would have had an individual with my lived experience, my connection of building a relationship, of shared lived experience to build a relationship and connection on the mentor end, to be able to connect with the youth. And, you know, hey, I've been there, I've done that, I've been in this situation, I've been in this circumstance. Let me help you. Let me find that fire that you have in you, that passion, that goal, and let's bring that out. So currently, that's what we do today. We're blessed with the opportunity to have wonderful relationships with systems, probation, San Diego Police Department, county, and connect with juveniles that are on juvenile probation. And then we're also getting into the schools we're going into horsemen for the first time. And that's actually one of the schools that I went to when I was a kid as well.
Wow.
So we're going to be able to connect with the tier 3 kids and connect with them, mentorship with evidence-based curriculum such as forward thinking, seeking safety. You know, I'm a trainer of IRP restorative practice, trauma informed, restorative justice. So I believe in that work, but it takes more than that. It takes more than the mentorship, the relationship. It takes the school to have a trauma-informed system, a trauma-informed approach, restorative justice, restorative practice. And one great example of that is he's no longer a principal, but his name is Dr. Iga, and in Cherokee Point, right there by University and 38th Street. He, for 4 years, it's elementary school, for 4 years, he did not suspend one kid. And they created a trauma-informed foundation connected with the parents, because that's really, really important. You could do all the work with the youth, right?
Right.
But if they come back to a home that has addiction and abandonment and trauma, and right, they're going to go back to the same lifestyle. So, but that trauma-informed system, the school, was powerful because they empowered the parents, and the parents were the one leading the trauma-informed workshops. There was connections with the kids, the youth. So, you know, that's, you know, I would love to see that vision in all schools. Yeah. But yes, mentoring, one-on-one connection, and building the relationship, identifying goals, and getting the kid where he needs to get. We need to find that passion, or whatever that is, riding a skateboard, or being a fireman, whatever that may be.
Right.
And we need to ignite that fire so that kid could get on the right path.
So let's talk about your background. You ended up, I think, if I look at your LinkedIn page, you ended up in Pelican Bay.
Yes, I from a kid as a juvenile, I ended up going to juvenile hall when I was 14 years old. I went to Hoover. I was incarcerated, and the cycle began. In and out.
What was your arrest for? Is it for little stuff or big stuff? Was it drugs or violence or?
It was well, the first charge was a bike. I seen a bike in the neighborhood. I didn't have one. I took it, and that's how the cycle began. Right there. So I went juvenile hall, back and forth, going to Campo. I ended up at an Arizona boys ranch, which they just closed down not too long ago. But in that Arizona boys ranch, I did learn some structure because it was ran a lot of military. So I learned a lot of discipline, and also discipline in juvenile hall, like doing my bed, doing a lot of reading, right? Like, and just, you know, just doing what I needed to do to educate myself. So I went to Arizona Boys Ranch, and when I was at Arizona Boys Ranch, I did great. I completed the program. I got my GED. I did a lot of things there that I had never done in my life. Run a marathon, basketball team, went bowling, physical training, Ironman, Mega Man. So that was pretty exciting to me. But I went back to the environment of East San Diego, where at that time in the early 90s, there was a lot of activity. And so I ended up lost kids. I ended up with a charge of attempted murder and about 6 211s. So this was during the three strikes era. And during the three strikes era, I was blessed to have a public defender that seen something in me. We actually made a connection because I ran a marathon, he ran a marathon, and he was going to do everything that he could for me.
Right.
So the best thing that he could do for me was 17 years and one strike.
Wow.
So that's the deal that I took. I took 17 years and one strike, and I ended up in Sinella prison. I remember it was the Super Bowl of the Chargers in San Francisco. I remember that clearly. I ended up on a level 4 yard. I was the youngest kid there, bald-headed, no mustache. And then here comes the role models again.
So were you recruited
Here, little homie.
by Mexican Mafia and those kind of guys, or when you were in Centinela? That's out by El Centro, correct?
Yes, yes, most definitely. And I was, because that's the world in there. There's no, it's politics is one thing. You stick to your kind. You got your African Americans ones, your Northerners, Southerners, and that's just the way it's identified. There's no doing this and doing that. It's just the political structure that's in there. So I'm this young kid. I remember I couldn't even buy cigarettes. They had my picture on the canteen wall, and they denied me, right? Like, they wouldn't allow me because I was 18. But I felt like I was in this big old park, just lost, terrified, had a lot of fear, anxiety. You know, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I didn't think I was ever going to get out.
But you can't show that in the prison
goes
yard.
the
You can't show fear and anxiety,
No,
and also you have to be careful who you reach out to. Could you explain for our listeners? There's the norteños and the sureños in terms of how they divide California in half, kind of by northern gangs and southern gangs for the Hispanic gangs. Can you kind of describe how that works?
Yeah, most definitely. And so in the prison system, the Mexican Mafia is the Southern gangs. And Southern gangs could go all the way from, they're all the way from San Diego up to Crescent City, but the territorial is most like towards LA down to Southern California. And then up north, for San Jose, San Francisco, up north, you got your northern Nuestra Familia, which is the northern structure. Then you have your Black Guerrilla Family, Aryan Brotherhood. So these are all prison gangs that have different political structures, right?
Right.
And so when you go to prison, when you get to prison, there's already a political structure set in place for you. Whether you like it or you're not, that's the structure that you're going to be a part of.
And so when you look at prison, I'm sorry, when you look at prison life, I mean, you know, my experience, and certainly talking to guys like you that have lived it, it's really about race is the divider. I mean, whites hang with whites and blacks hang with blacks and Hispanics hang with Hispanics, and everybody has their territory, and it's difficult to show empathy to other people and other races. It's difficult to connect or even, you know, show some sort of friendship. Am I correct in that assumption that you're supposed to stick with your own folks, and that there are punishment and consequences if you don't?
Most definitely. Like the yards are broken up. In this section, you'll have your Southern Latinos. This section, you'll have your Northern Latinos. Their benches. In this section, it's all divided. So, you know, there's certain rules in place where, you know, you can't share certain things, and you can't do this, and because if you break the rules, then there's consequences. So that was more of the structure of prison in the 90s, the 80s, the 90s, but now there's more of a movement happening also in prison, where there's been hunger strikes for individuals that are in isolation, such as Corcoran Shoe, Pelican Bay Shoe, Tehachapi Shoe, the inhumane isolation torture. Now suddenly all these groups have been coming together because individuals, you know, political structure have been tired of being isolated in them segregated housing units. So
the
there's
segregated,
been more unity.
Just for my listeners, the segregated housing unit is probably the worst punishment you can get. It's typically solitary. It's you're in by yourself. Your yard time is typically an hour a day, things like that, correct?
Yes, and I could give you a description of what that is. When I was in Pelican Bay Shoe, I was there for 10 years. You have four cells on the bottom, 4 cells on the top, 1 shower, 1 small concrete yard. We are able to have appliances, TV, and so that's it. There's no sunshine. You can't see the outside world, period. The walls are painted a certain way because it's designed to break you mentally, right?
Right.
And so that's the structure of Pelican Bay. You come out for 30 to 45 minutes, an hour a day, and then you get a shower 2 to 3 days, and it rotates. So that's the human contact that you have.
So how did you get from Centinela to Pelican Bay? What was the movement through the prison system in California to get to Pelican Bay? For people who don't know, Pelican Bay tends to be where they put the most serious offenders, the most dangerous, the most violent. So it's the prison of prisons in California. It is. Would you say it's probably the most secure, where the most violent people go?
Yes, and the way that I went to prison was when I was explaining that when I went first to Centinela, the role modeling. Even though I was scared, I was afraid, had anxiety. I was taken under the wing by the older homies, and you do this and you do that, and here comes the criminal addictive thinking, the patterns, the behaviors, and you have all these individuals with high testosterone and a lot of a desire to do something, and so I began to get involved. I began to be angry. I began to get into troubles with 15s, assaults, and I was part of a couple stabbings, and then I eventually ended up validation of the Association of the Mexican Mafia.
Right.
And so they validated me, even though I was just I wasn't the one involved, but IGI at that time I was involved, but I wasn't the one running the yards or whatnot. But I was still by association validated.
Right.
So once I was validated, then I began. They put me in Centinela. I was in there at SEG, which is a segregated housing unit, until they transferred me to Pelican Bay.
Wow.
And so there I did my last 10 years and I paroled. But you know what? That was, I believe that was the best thing that could have happened to me, because I was running around. I eventually started running around with my chicken with my head cut off and all these influences. But now that I was isolated, in isolation there's power. So
gives you time to think, think about your life.
It gave me time to reflect, and even though I never received no type of rehabilitation programs while I was in prison during that time, there was none of that, right?
Right.
And so I began to read a lot. I like write manuscripts, stay entertained, educate myself. I love history. And so while I was there, there's some sharp minds. There's individuals that could be historians, teachers, doctors, engineers, if given the opportunity. So we used to have good discussions on, and if I had if I had another opportunity, I would take it. I was the only one that had a parole date. Everyone else had life terms. They were never getting out. So they were just never getting out. So,
if you look at your time in the Arizona Boys Ranch, do you think that gave you a little bit of the structure you needed to start to think about how to operate your life when you got to Pelican Bay, where you said I had a little bit of a formation there in the Arizona Boys Ranch? And also, if I could ask you a compound question, it seems like the Arizona Boys Ranch would be something that wouldn't be given to every kid. Were you in a program in juvenile hall? Were you qualified for that, or how did you get out to Arizona?
Yeah, it was a YA alternative. So that was my last chance.
I see. Youth Authority.
And yeah. So either you're going to go to YA, that's your next step, or this. And so it's funny you mentioned that, because I was so excited about the opportunities, the marathon running, the physical, the Ironman, those are the stories I used to share when I was there. We'd just have our little discussions and talk about, past life, and I would bring those up. And so, yes, that's definitely something that I found some discipline and structure. But when I paroled, right, when I was finally done with what I needed to get done, and I made a commitment for change, a commitment for transformation, a commitment to be a family man, and the direction that I'm headed and what I'm doing now. When I finally made that decision, the biggest thing that helped me was the CBT, the criminal addictive behaviors, the patterns, the distorted thinking, the core beliefs that I once had as a kid in prison. I needed a complete brainwash, right? And that's what I did. And I was able to identify now my passion, my desires, my motivation, change my whole completely core beliefs, right? And so I didn't have biological kids when I paroled. I married into a family with 2 kids, which I love as my own.
Did you meet your wife when you were in prison or outside?
No, I met her while we were outside.
Okay, so
yeah,
so
we met while we were out.
So just to back up for something that I think people wonder about is in the gang lifestyle, certainly the hardcore prison gang lifestyle that you're talking about, it's blood in, blood out. You don't typically quit those guys and say, I want to go live a straight life. I mean, they have a lot of things that they want guys to do on the outside to continue their criminal activities. So you had to make peace with those guys, or you had to come up with some sort of process to say, this is not the world I want to live in, and they let you out. I mean, how does that work for you to be able to come out safely out of a prison gang lifestyle?
Love. I went to this last time when I paroled. I went to Cork and Shoe, and I was there for 3 months. It was during the last hunger strikes, and I did the hunger strikes with everybody, and my mentorship actually started from in there. Like, hey, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing with yourself? Like, you need to get your stuff right and go live life on life terms. So when I was there, I told everybody, look, like, I love you guys, but I'm starting a new path, a new journey. I'm not coming back. This is it for me. And I don't know what I'm going to get into, but it's going to be something good, something positive. And so that's the direction I headed. But now I'm in a situation where, youth empowerment, we have contracts with the Board State Community Corrections, juvenile probation, the San Diego Unified School District, the Project Safe Neighborhoods. That's the initiative through the United States, collaboration with law enforcement. So now I'm bringing resources for the individuals that are coming out of prison. So now everybody knows the transformation that I made. They're inspired, and they're coming to me for resources and coming to me to connect with the programming and the services that we provide. And our nonprofit youth empowerment is actually in the arcade system, which is the directory in prison. So now everybody's blowing me up like, I need this. I want to be a part of this. I need transformation for the individuals, that are paroling. They want to be a part of. And then the individuals that are there that are doing life are asking for assistance for youth empowerment to connect with them. So when they go to board, then they have a possibility of a parole date, right? So now there's more resources in there. Now there's more rehabilitation in there. Now there's more programming in there. So I'm just blessed to have the opportunity to connect with the individuals. They knew me from the past. They know where I stand now, and they want to be a part of. So it's been nothing but a gratitude. And then the reality is that these adults, guess what? I've been working with their kids,
right,
on the juvenile side,
right.
So their kids became gang members, and so guess who they come to? They come to youth empowerment to connect with the kids, because that's not really what they want for their kids. The kids just follow the path of the dad.
When you look at the parole board process, and I want to get into your thoughts on restorative justice, I've interviewed 3 workplace violence murderers in prison as part of my work, and my main consulting subject is school violence prevention and workplace violence prevention. And I wrote the first book in the country on that issue in '94, and really started to kick off around 2000 as an issue after Columbine. One of the guys that I interviewed in prison who killed 2 people in San Diego at the General Dynamics plant down on Pacific Highway, he's been in since '92, and he has regular parole hearings, and he does not. And I've talked to him about this. I've met with him face to face in prison twice, and I've corresponded with him over the years. He refuses to apologize. I mean, he shot and killed his boss, and he shot and killed the HR manager that handled his termination. And I said, his name is Robert Mack. I said, Robert, you have to apologize to the families and to the people that you harmed. And he's still stuck on this sort of path of, well, the company treated me poorly and I did what I had to do. And so talk to me about the sense of atonement and apology that, appeals to parole boards or at least starts to get your life back on a path where you say, I'm taking ownership.
Yes. And first and foremost, restorative justice, you have to make amends. That's the first step. You have to plead for forgiveness for the families, for the victims. And I'm just going to give you a great example. She's an employee of mine. Her name's Nikki Martinez. She went in when she was 17 years of age. She actually went in for a murder, right? He completed, I believe, 25 years total sentence.
Wow.
So when she went into the prison system, she went in with anger, resentment, fear, everything that I expressed earlier about how I went in. So she went down that lifestyle as well in the women's prison, and she did 10 years of that, right? Until this new law passed that if you were convicted as a youth, you might have the opportunity to parole.
Right.
So something clicked in her head, like, you know what? There's hope. I need to move forward and make amends with the family, and that's what she did. She began to work on herself while she was in there. We plead for forgiveness to the family, the victims. They forgave her. She's connected with them. She has 2 photo albums full of certificates. He created 2 juvenile justice programs within the prison system, and she became a counselor while she was in prison. So that's a prime example of what it needs to look like for the parole board to let an individual be released. So when she was released, who am I going to connect with? So she connected with youth empowerment.
Right.
Currently, she's been out 16 months. She's still on parole for another 7 years, and she's my best hire for youth empowerment.
Right.
She has a case management opportunity working with the adult reentry, and she also has a mentor position where she works with the kids that are on juvenile probation.
Right. Good
So
for her.
she actually on parole, still on parole, but has access to going inside of juvenile hall.
Right. Good for her.
So she's just dynamic, and her thing is making amends in life and helping others not to make the same mistake. So go ahead.
So speaking of restorative justice, my best example of restorative justice is Azim Kamisa. Do you know Azim?
No.
So just quickly, Azim Kamisa, his son, Tony, was a San Diego State University kid. He was 20 years old. In 1995, he was delivering pizzas. I think it was in Mid-City, and he was shot and killed during a robbery. The kid that killed him was, I think, 16 or 17 years old. I'm sorry, 14 years old. And his guardian was a guy named Ples Felix. So Azim Kamisa met with Ples Felix, and they started something called the Forgiveness Project. So the forgivenessproject.com, you can see more about this. I met with Azim once many years ago, probably around 2000 or so, and he's just an incredible man. And he brought, Ples Felix, orchestrated the restorative justice conversation, the things that I want to hear about from you, where he brought this kid who shot and killed his own son into the same room, and he forgave this boy for doing it. So you look in your heart and you say, could I do that in my own family? Could I do that if somebody killed somebody in my family? And think of the things that you have to, the leap you have to make to be able to do that as a person. So talk to me about the restorative justice process where usually a juvenile offender comes in with the crime victim, sexual assault, robbery, burglary, murder of a family member, something like that. And there's an orchestrated, structured, facilitated conversation. It's not just a free for all. It has to go through a process. So talk to us about how that process works.
Yeah, how youth empowerment was founded. We connected with the family. This whole family dynamic. Mother was on federal probation, husband on probation, all the kids on parole, probation, everybody, right? And so the 8-year-old was not on probation, was not a part of no system, but he vandalized a school, right? When he vandalized the school, the authorities stepped in. They connected with the San Diego Police Department, connected with the restorative justice program. And so what we did, we came together with the principals, the teachers, where harm was done because there was a graffiti right to the walls, the staff of the school. And there was community members present. And so we sat down. And each individual had an opportunity to have a discussion. And in this discussion, we connected with the kid. These are the actions that you committed, and by you vandalizing the school, this is the process to that. So everyone shared their experience from the lens of the principal, the teachers, how they felt, their emotions, and I came in as the community member that was connected with the kid.
Right.
So first, the kid, after hearing everybody's perspective, is this something that you feel you want to apologize, that you want to connect? How can we put a plan together that's going to help you so you don't commit this again? The kid asked for forgiveness. He wanted to get back on track. So we all wrapped around him and we put a plan together, and the kid ended up, turning out okay. So that was just an example of how we all came together on a restorative justice to connect with someone that committed crime. He definitely did not get the charge, and because of this, the DA didn't press no charges on him.
Right. So talk about there are critics of the restorative justice process, as you know, who say, well, these criminals, they'll just fake apologize and they don't really mean it. There's no empathy involved, and they just want to go through this process as another thing to sort of game the system. I mean, I'm sure from your experience how what that looks like in terms of people trying to game the process. And so how do you what emphasis do you put on the people that are involved to say, look, this is a real deal. You've got to tell the truth. You've got to be honest about your situation.
Well, that's where for us, the shared lived experience, that's why I had a seat at that table, because I could identify what's real, what might be BS. Is this kid serious, right? Is he just running drag to get where he needs to get, or is his family running drag to get where he needs to get? And so, being that I was so connected to the family, I had a relationship with the kid.
Right.
And so I knew that the kid, he was really, really sorry for what he did. And that's something that I shared with everybody that was involved. And the end result of this was the mother was off probation, all her kids off probation, and this kid that didn't get charged is not on probation. So it was a whole family dynamic because we were so connected to the family. So and you're going to have some individuals that, they're going to do what they're going to do. But for the most part, after the kid or individual, if they're put in a situation and there's high support for this individual, the chances of that individual, healing from whatever he needs to heal for and becoming a productive member of society, the chances are going to be high. So,
Arthur, we have about 5 minutes left. I know you've got another appointment you got to get to, and I appreciate your time today. What I wanted to ask is first off, your website, youthempowermentsd.org. You can take folks can donate to your process there, your projects.
Yes, there's definitely a donation button there. We're actually putting a community engagement event throughout the whole San Diego, have a partnership with WTA Sports. They're the ones that do the monster trucks at the Del Mar Fair. So we're going to start a community engagement, GoFundMe, and donations just to help support that work. The community engagement because of COVID-19 and everything that's happening, this depression and, practicing social distancing. But right now in San Diego County, the overdoses are high.
Right.
From last year to right now, there's a 60% increase, and there's just a lot of anger, depression, and so we need to. I understand the COVID-19 and practicing the guidelines and everything, but we need to bring some joy and peace to these families. So we're going to start connecting all different areas of San Diego County and bringing 4 or 5 monster trucks to the community and just having some events that's going to lead to the big event in December through the Del Mar Fair. So yes, the website's there. You could email me as well personally, arthur@youthempowermentsd.org. But, I believe in the whole collaborative approach in San Diego County. We're just blessed to have great relationships with law enforcement. Chief Nizlak, San Diego Police Department, great friend of mine, Chief Adolfo, the county, and just, that's what I believe is a true public safety model with law enforcement involved with the community's voice at the table. So what we have going on is a little different because you're dealing with all individuals with lived experience, but we have great data that supports our work of, the work that we do. So we just want to build a healthy community and connect with the individuals and have prevention, intervention work, and just get the job done.
And Arthur, that sounds like you're on a path that's for success for these kids. And what I think about in my short experience of having dealt with people in prison that I've talked to is, and maybe this is me not knowing the whole story, but it seems like at least now today there are more programs for guys in prison about stress management, and we're teaching meditation to guys in prison. We've got the substance abuse training or the 12-step programs, which have always been there. It seemed like maybe back in the day, the 80s and 90s, those things fell apart because no budget money, and they cut all those things. But it seems to me, and tell me if I'm right, that there are more things in prison to aim to these guys to get them back on the path, and it's not just lock them up and throw away the key. Do you have a sense that the California state prison system, for all its flaws and all its problems, is at least trying to get some structured programs, counseling, mentorship, drug abuse, stuff like that?
I think that they're barely starting the process, but they're starting it, right? And so, which is a great thing. And as far as resources, we're past the late 80s, 90s, their era. Now the prison reform resources, yes, there's definitely a lot more program. We've been at the table advocating for resources. So youth empowerment happens to be one of the benefactors of resources through the Board of State Community Corrections. When we received that grant, in the proposal that we wrote, the story that I'm sharing here with you guys is what I put in the proposal, right?
Right.
And so we were one of the first lived experience nonprofits that received that. And that's actually one of the things that they were looking for. Like, you have to have lived experience, individuals that have been part of the justice system in the proposals to receive the grant. So there's a lot of opportunities coming down the pipeline to the state, county. That's a blessing because now we're going to be able to bring some resources to the communities that are in need.
As we wrap up, I'd like to thank Arthur Soriano, the youthempowermentsd.org, and his website and the work that he's doing. Arthur, I appreciate your time and your focus on this issue. I really think, as a guy who was just stunned by meeting Azim Khamisa, that you and Azim would be kindred spirits. You both would understand the world that you're working in, and I think he would be a perfect mentor partner for you about the things that you're doing, because he's been doing this stuff since '95, and so I really commend you to reach out to Azim and find out what he's all about and the work that he's done with Puz Felix. So again, it's Arthur Soriano, youthempowermentsd.org. They're making a difference in the San Diego community. Arthur, thanks very much for your time and attention and the support that you're doing for these kids and for the adults that you're coming across, and I can't thank you enough for coming on today.
Yeah, no, thank you, and thank you for connecting, and I look forward to collaborating and building a relationship. So
Yeah, we'll be in
everyone
touch.
just take care. Okay.
Thanks very much, Arthur, and good luck in San Diego.
Okay.
And
Thank you very much.
I miss San Diego, so I got to get back there. And when I do, I'll track you down.
Yeah, we'll come back and then we'll have a burrito at Berto's or Roberto's somewhere.
Absolutely, I missed that.
On my treat.
Absolutely, thanks very much, Arthur. Take care.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, take care.
Arthur Soriano, that was San Diego's Youth Empowerment, SD.org, a great place to make a donation if you have the wherewithal to do that. Let's talk about Crime Time's Stupidest Crook of the Week, one of my favorite parts of the show, Crime Time's Stupidest Crook of the Week, where I get to talk about some of our dumbest criminals who managed to get themselves arrested based on their monumental stupidity. Okay, Dateline, Sugarland, Texas. 2 men were arrested after breaking into a Best Buy in Sugarland, Texas, and one of them accidentally butt-dialed 911 while they were breaking in. The pair allegedly stole several laptops and other electronic items. Police say the 3 suspects entered the big box electronics store, tripped the alarm around 3 o'clock in the morning. At the same time, dispatchers also received a 911 call from a phone in the area, but no one could be heard on the line, just background noises. The police got there and after a high-speed chase, caught all 3 of them. So they butt-dialed the police accidentally. That's our Crime Time Stupidest Crook of the Week. Let's test your Crime Time IQ here. This is Crime Time's quiz of the week here. The Crime Time quiz question is, can you be arrested for flying a private plane while drunk? Yes, although it's very tough on the officers to do a field sobriety test at 3,000 feet. It is illegal to drive a car, a boat, a jet ski, an airplane, a motorcycle, and even a bicycle while you are drunk over the national .08 blood alcohol level. So don't drink and fly. Crime Time safety tip of the week. After having my mailbox smashed on the road in front of my house for the millionth time, I'm reminded of the value of getting a mailbox, either through the U.S. Postal Service or the UPS store. Think of all the valuable things that you get through the mail: checks, credit cards, new credit cards, blank checks, deposit slips, medications, financial and proprietary documents, and products that you order online or from Amazon. Consider getting a mailbox to use for this type of mail. You can keep your regular USPS mailbox for catalogs and junk mail and mail that doesn't have to be better protected. But once you get your new mailbox, start the process of notifying your bank, your credit cards, your insurance company, your mortgage company, and the shipping address on your Amazon account. It might take a few months of monitoring to get all the accounts switched over. It's amazing how many that you have to this new secure mailbox. But think about getting a P.O. box at the post office, which is secure, or getting a post office box at the UPS store. You get 24-hour access and you protect your mail a little bit better. So thanks for listening to this episode of Crime Time. I encourage you to go to my website at crimetimeradio.com. Send me an email with questions or topics you want me to cover on future shows. You can connect with me on LinkedIn at Dr. Steve Albrecht or on Twitter at Dr. Steve Albrecht, and that's ALBRECHT. In our world, there are sheep and shepherds and wolves. Too many people are sheep and too few people are shepherds. There are lots of wolves out there. There are not enough police officers or sheriff's deputies to protect us all. You need to be a shepherd. Take care of yourself and protect your family, your loved ones, your friends, and your coworkers. Pay attention. Be prepared to defend yourself with legal force if necessary. Be a good witness for the police if you see a crime. Stay safe and aware and alert at home, at work, at school, and even on the road. Thanks for listening to Crime Time, and thanks to Jim Whining, producer Matt, producer Jeff, and all the good folks at Acts Media Group. I'm Steve Albrecht, and thanks for listening to What I Know is Right.